Which of these should you be using? A fairway, a hybrid, or a driving iron? A lot of people are making the wrong choice. So in my hands here, I have 3 golf clubs. I have a 5-wood, I have a 2-iron, and I have a 3 hybrid. Now they are all the same loft, but they are different lengths and they all have different head shapes. So which one is going to be right for your game? Because what I see from a lot of people who I play golf with, amateurs, high handicappers, low handicappers, sometimes we've got the wrong ones in our bag, and I think there's 3 things that we should clarify to make sure that we're picking the right one. I've also got a little bit of data from ShotScope to help us understand how these are used and which one might be best for you. So just to explain the difference of each one, we've got the Fairway wood, very classic. We sort of know these for a long time. It's the bigger headed wood. This, like I say, is the 5-wood, and as we go through these, you might maybe transfer this into a 7-wood, a 3-iron and a 4 hybrid. But we have the 5-wood there, that's set at 19 degrees. It's the biggest head of all 3 ones, and it's the longest shaft of all 3 of the clubs. We then go into the hybrid, which is sort of a new thing over the last 10 to 15 years. It's sort of a mix between the iron and the fairway wood. A smaller head than the fairway wood, but a bigger head than the iron. Again, set at 19 degrees. And then we have the 2-iron. This is set at 19 degrees, the smallest head of them all with the shortest shaft. But which is right for your game? So I think the first thing that we need to look at, and the difference between them all that we will see, is how far do these golf clubs go? Because if that's what you're looking for, we probably need to understand which one will go the furthest. And I've hit some shots in my simulator here, and it's of no surprise which one comes out on top. I hit shots with the 5-wood, the hybrid, and the 2-iron. And as I said earlier, they're all 19 degrees. So theoretically, if they're the same loft, they should all go the same difference. But if we look at what the numbers say here, we can see that the 5-wood is a clear winner. And that would be where I would go if I was going down the distance route. Because if I'm looking for something that I want to get distance from, there would be no point choosing the 2-iron. If that's what the sole purpose of this club that we should be using is, we need to pick the right one. So if you're someone who is looking to put one of these in your bag, the first thing you need to go and do is do a distance test. Because we also need to know how far it's going relative to another club, because if you're putting in a 5-wood, yet it goes the same distance as your 3-wood and maybe only a couple of yards further than maybe a 7-wood or a 3 hybrid, is it the right club for you? And you can see some numbers up here on screen now of how far the average 25 handicapper hits those clubs, and also how many of those clubs are in people's bags. So that might just give you an indication as to the one that you need to pick for the distance. And the 5-wood, I would probably say, is the club that we would use maybe as a secondary teeing off club, or maybe for those longer shots into par 4s or par 5s when we're finding the fairway. Because we actually did a video earlier in the year where we looked at the difference between a 3-wood and the 5-wood, and if I just throw the numbers up on screen here of how far those were going, you'll actually see that the 5-wood wasn't too far behind, and further in some cases as well. And that's because as we think about the club head speed that we need to use to actually get the ball launching and get the right carry distance, sometimes actually having a 3-wood might not benefit us because we don't get the launch we need. So if you're looking for distance, I would probably suggest that having the fairway wood is the club that you need. But what about if you're looking for something else? What if you're looking for versatility? So which is going to be the most versatile club for our games? And to answer that question, I think we need to ask another one. Where are we actually playing a lot of our golf, and what do we want from this golf club? Because depending on where you play, you might need a certain flight, because when it comes to say something like the Open Championship, what we see from a lot of the pros is that the 2-iron comes into play a lot, and that is because it's based on a links course, and what they're trying to do is control the flight. And actually, as we see here what the peak height of all these clubs were, we see that the 2-iron was actually the lowest. So if you're someone who is playing at a very windy golf course, you probably want that club that will maybe drive it a little bit lower off the fairways. It's not going to launch too high and get caught up in the wind, something like the hybrid or the 5-wood may do. As where, if you're playing somewhere like a parkland that we're on the Dukes now, or some of the parklands around the country, or you're travelling here, there and everywhere, and you want something that can be used not only off the tee, that can be used off the fairway, or even out of the rough, it might be that the hybrid is the club for you. So we've got to understand what we want this club for. We know that if we're using it as a secondary tee club, that the 5-wood comes out on the best in distance. But if we're looking at to do a certain job and be versatile in certain scenarios, maybe the hybrid could be the one for you as well. So off the fairway, if you're looking for a club to do a little bit of everything, the hybrid golf club comes with a slightly larger sole. It comes with a slightly shallower face than the iron, not as shallow as the fairway would, but when we find something like this where we're just on the fairway here and it's sat nicely, this club is quite easy to launch up in the air and get the appropriate distance, just like this one. Launched up there and done nicely. As where if we just take a wander over here, what we find is another golf ball in the rough. And if the ball was sat like so here, if we come in close, what this club is designed to do, with it having that slightly smaller head than the fairway would, it can still ride the turf a little bit. As where the iron might get clogged up and not launch out as easily, the fairway wood might get snagged up in the rough a little bit too much. The hybrid club, out of a little bit of a rough lie, can still pop up nicely, get that launch and land softly as it's coming into a green. So out of scenarios like this club also becomes very versatile. Launched out and pops, as where the other clubs are going to snag a little bit too much. Another point where the hybrid comes in really well for versatility is when you get round the green and you maybe find yourself in a little bit of a tricky situation here. We can see the collar really sharply cut up against the fringe grass. So with a wedge, sometimes it might not quite get the contact we want and a putter will get too snagged, as where using a hybrid in a shot like this, we can actually apply our putting stroke, and just because of that little bit of loft and how the sole is, it will just brush through the turf and the loft will give it a little bit of an initial lift, and we can play some small little chip shots with our hybrid as well. The 5-wood might get snagged a bit too much and come out a little bit too fiery, and the 2-iron will just get snagged because of the depth of the face, as where this perfect little club to just pop it out and let it go running. As long as you pick the right line, it's a great shot to use around the green as well when you start practicing it. The third and final thing that I would think you'd need to consider about using one of these golf clubs is forgiveness. Now, as we choose them, we want them to be easy to hit. And as we can see here with the stats that we showed earlier, the actual hybrid is the most popular club in the golf bag of most amateur golfers. And that's because, as we've just discovered, it's pretty good for distance, it's quite versatile, and also because of the construction, they are a forgiving golf club. Now, if you are a low handicapper and you have a higher swing speed and you are getting a more centered strike, you might find that the 2-iron is the one that is for you. You can control the flight how you want to. You can hit it low, you can hit it high, and it gets a good distance. You might find that these two clubs launch too high for you and you find that you can't actually work them how you want to. But if you are a mid to high handicapper, I think we probably could discount this one and sit in the bracket of either a fairway wood or a hybrid. The question we just have to ask ourselves is, what is it for? If you're looking for the distance off the tee, probably this one. If we're looking for more versatility, we probably need the hybrid. We also can see from here what's actually in people's bags, the percentages of those used, and how many clubs in terms of hybrid versus wedges are in the bag. Because one thing we have to consider, we might actually want a 5 wood and a 4 hybrid. We might only go driver, 5 wood, 3 hybrid. We might throw a 3 wood in there as well. But once we've got something going on at this end of the bag, we might have to lose another wedge as well. So when thinking about the forgiveness aspect, ask yourself, is it that you actually might need a few more hybrids than longer irons, or you might need a few more fairway woods and forgo one wedge? Because if we can get this right, I think this area of the bag, we can gain a lot of success and start to actually hit these shots better just by picking the right clubs for us. So I hope that guide helps you clarify which one of these should you be using. Do you want distance? Do you want versatility? Or do you want forgiveness? Find out which one's best for you, and from there we can make some smarter choices. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and why not check out another video here that can help you play better golf.